Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. We'll give it a couple of more seconds so that everyone can just join in. We have a good audience of about 60, 70 people. Hopefully, over the next couple of minutes, more people join in as well. Welcome. So, my name is Riddhi, and I lead the Youth for Capacity program at the UN Climate Change Secretariat. I'm here with a couple of my colleagues as well. So, shout out to Eva, Javanik. That being said, this is our third Becoming session of the Becoming series. And if you haven't been a part of these series before, what we look at is that young people are not just recipients of capacity building, but they're capacity builders themselves. And looking at young people as this active role that they play as agents of change, we designed this series as something of how young people can take those active roles and how can you become in this case, a data-driven climate leader. So today we're so happy to have Climate Policy Radar on board. This is going to be a 1.5 hour session where a lot of learning, a lot of testing things out, and we have fantastic colleagues joining us that are going to take us through that adventure and journey. But if this is your first session, if you've never heard of Youth for Capacity before, I'm just going to quickly pause here for you to look at the QR code. But essentially, this is a program that we've been running over the last 5 years with the contribution and from the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security of Italy. There are donors, and what we do essentially is to strengthen the capacities of young people and recognize their role as capacity builders in driving ambitious climate action. So anything capacity building, you can always come to Youth for Capacity and join this community and this ecosystem that we've kind of built. I will share some other resources and upcoming events and opportunities towards the end of the session. But without any further ado, I would like to pass it out on to Climate Policy Radar to just take us through the session. So over to you, Jamie. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Rudy. It's really good to be with you all today, everyone. Good to see so many people in the room, and welcome wherever you're joining from around the world. My name's Jamie. I'm Senior Partnerships Manager at Climate Policy Radar. We're an independent nonprofit based in the UK, but working globally. And our mission is to build open databases of climate documents and use AI-powered tools to help open up those documents and help you find information within those documents. We're going to get into that in much more detail today. Before we do that, I'm really pleased to say that myself and my colleague Anna are joined by our CEO and co-founder, Mikhail Nachmani, who's going to give today's keynote speech. To give you some context to Mikhail, Mikhail is an international expert in climate policy and governance with a background in law and finance as well, holding a PhD in climate policy from the London School of Economics. And as well as being founder and CEO of Climate Policy Radar, Mikhail advises the IPCC on responsible use of AI and is also a fellow of the UNFCCC Resilience Frontiers. So really pleased to pass over to Mikhail to kick us off in this session. Mikhail, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Rudy, and thanks, Youth for Capacity, for having me. And mainly, thank you for all of you to make time in the middle or beginning or the end of your day to come and hang out with us and listen and hopefully learn. And most importantly, to be inspired, hopefully. I think becoming is a really good word for this series. Most of you are becoming something right now, something professionally. You may be becoming a policymaker or a researcher or a campaigner or an entrepreneur, or maybe the version of yourself that you were always hoping to be or what you want to be next. It's okay to change your mind later. I still am changing my mind all the time on who I want to be when I grow up. But what I want to talk about in the next 10 or 15 minutes is a second thing that you're becoming at the same time, whether you chose it or not. You are becoming someone who is working in a world where both the climate and the tools that we're using to understand it are changing faster than we have ever seen before. I've been supporting people making high-stakes decisions for the good part of the last 30 years, disclosing my age. And I didn't come into this from a technical background. I don't think any of the people who are working on AI now were born into AI. I trained in law and in policy and in finance and not in computer science. And I ended up helping building tools that help people find out, I mean, in this current iteration, what governments actually promised on climate change and whether they're keeping those promises and whether the money is moving in the right place. And while I run CPR, and Jamie and Anna will tell you more about that, I'm mainly here to share what I think the next few years demand of us. And when I say us, I mean all of us who are working to make this world a better and a safer and a kinder and a prettier place for all of us, however we're doing it, whatever our job title is, and wherever we are in our personal and professional lives. So one thing I know is that you don't need to tell me, you don't need me to tell you that the climate is changing very, very fast. You probably know that better than most people in most rooms. But I want to put next to that a second acceleration that is running in parallel. Everyone is talking about AI right now, but not much of that conversation is about what it actually means for how climate decisions get made. And the volume and the speed at which AI and data and models are changing right now has a great impact on that. First of all, the volume of climate laws and policies and science and commentary that is being produced has exploded in the last years. And in parallel, again, so is the machinery for processing it. Language models and search tools and automated analysis and all of that. And they're still new enough that nobody really in the field knows yet what's good enough and has worked out how to use them well. And by well, I mean safely and responsibly in a way that makes the best of them, but also is acutely aware of the risks and make sure that we don't mess it up, because we could really, really mess it up. So while you're not just becoming a climate professional in this moment of climate urgency, you're becoming one where the tools to becoming one are changing underneath your feet. And being able to navigate that is critical. Now, I'm going to say something very plainly. Data, and it's funny coming from me as someone who runs kind of a data outfit. Data and models and tools are not going to save us, not alone. Nothing about a better search or a faster model will close down a coal plant, or will write a treaty, or will give food to a family that is suffering from drought. But not using the data and the tools and the models, or using them badly, is going to ruin us. And that's a tension that we need to navigate. Now, there are two big levers to fixing all the mess that we got ourselves into: climate, biodiversity, land, health, human rights, whatever, they're all interconnected, of course. And the two big levers are a better policy, again, climate and others, better policy, so what governments write into law and actually enforce, and money, moving it from where it is now to where it really needs to be, public and private capital, looking at where they flow. That is often, or sometimes at least, a better predictor of what happens than any announcement by a minister. And around both of those levers, of course, we have public participation and the stories that we tell, and whether there is buy-in and political buy-in and constituent buy-in to all of those things, and the board buy-in if you need to make a decision as a corporate, and how strong these decisions are, and do they survive change of governments, and so on. So getting those decisions right has to rely on data. It has to rely on our ability to quickly find and analyze and put to use data. A policymaker, for example, who is testing out a policy or a policy idea will be better off, much better off, if they have seen other examples of this being put to play and being able to say, yes, we have seen that in places that have enacted XYZ, a carbon tax, a scrappage scheme, or something like that, we will be able to demonstrate reductions to emissions, improved health, increased GDP, whatever your metric is. And of course, different metrics, different preferences under different policy environments. And the same way, an investor that can't verify that the company's transition plan actually will survive litigation risks, that companies get sued if increasingly and more strategically if they don't act on climate, then you're pricing risk on guesswork. So there's quite a lot of data that really underpins those big decisions. So this is not a technical nice to have, but being able to use data is closer to the core skill that being effective in any of those roles requires. And again, sort of whatever role you land at, you will find a data angle to that. So how do we pull these levers in the right direction? Is a big question. I want to zoom out for a second and just give you a backdrop against which we're operating. We can say, great, let's get the data and let's put it to use, and let's make sure that we use the right models. And the zooming out bit is that at the same time, right now, as you all well know, because you're intelligent people who I'm sure educating yourselves in world news, you kind of have to be, under a rock to not find out that there is a big, big fight going on right now about who controls information. And it has nothing to do with the climate specifically. Whose model gets used, whose model gets sold, whose chips the data run on, whose narratives get amplified, whose social media gets the traction, whose version of the truth essentially becomes the default or the ones that people cite. And that contest is very real and very geopolitically driven, and it has a couple of very big players, and we don't need to name them in order to say who we are, but there's also other players that are in this, and some of them are trying to influence global legislation regimes around creating and using artificial intelligence and data. And it is a big chaotic mess. I'm saying that as my professional opinion, not just as my personal opinion. And we still need to operate in parallel to that. But despite all of those things, a ton of a CO2 is still a ton of a CO2, regardless of which narrative is around it. And a family that doesn't have food because the village suffered from a drought or from flooding is still suffering from hunger. And that has nothing to do with the narrative. Because the extreme heat bit exists regardless of the paper that cites them, whatever model that the paper that cites it ran on. So the contest on this story is real, but it's subordinate to this harder question, which is, are we making these decisions to protect whatever is dear to us, our common future, and increasingly our common present, using the right tools? Now, all of this, I'm kind of, we did the zoom out picture on that, and we will now zoom out to another thing, which is none of these data and models, of course, and many more of them exist these days. Again, the explosion of information is really remarkable, and none of them act alone, right? Climate Policy Radar, as you'll hear a little later, collects the laws and the policies and the litigation cases that are happening in the courts, and some industry reports, and some diplomatic records and so on. There's many other data sets. There's satellite images, there are budget records, there are corporate reports, there are indigenous communities testimonials. There is a huge amount of data, and we need to make sure that it is connected. We need to make sure that it speaks the same language, or that we can make sure that it speaks the same language when we want to. We need to know what's missing. We need to make sure that we're not biased towards only the ones that are easier to access, or the ones that are in languages that are easier for models to read and get trained on, and not only material that is produced in the global north. And all of that interconnectivity and collaboration matters greatly for those decisions. So AI can do quite a lot in these things, in harmonizing and making data sets interoperable. And here I want to name that I'm going to take a wild guess that you, as young, informed, value-driven people, I'm making all of those assumptions about you just for you being on this call today, is that some of you have reluctance to use certain AI systems, or that have at least strong feelings about some of them. I know my own 3 Gen Z kids have strong feelings about some of that. And 3 reservations, I think, are at the core of some of that. Of course, the environmental bits, data centers and AI. So data centers on which AI runs have a huge footprint environmentally, from an energy and water and minerals and equity points of view. So I'm parking that on the side. We don't have time to talk about it today. The second, and I think the biggest risk, is the handing off of the cognitive load, which is a reluctance that we should have about that. How do we make sure that we don't just give off to the machines something that is becoming easier and easier and easier to do, and eroding our sense of agency and our sense of critical thinking and our sense of participating and our sense of noticing when someone is telling us something that is convenient for us to hear, so we feel really good about ourselves and it reads really well, but actually it might not be true, or it might be biased, or it might omit something that is very critical to the discussion. And because of the ease of that, then that is something that we need to note a lot. And I know that from my conversations with many people, young and young at heart, that that is something that is a barrier to them. And lastly, of course, that a lot of AI systems mix up fact and norms. So they will tell you the best solution is, but the best means very, very different things for different people. So that where the boundary is between humans and machines needs to leave the judgment, the norms, the values to humans. The very simple example of that is if we ask, what is a good policy to decarbonize very, very quickly, we can find ourselves with a policy that removes many people off their land and builds a lot of, I don't know, solar capacity, or that cuts down a forest in order to install renewables. So there's a lot of trade-offs that one cannot fit into a model, however good and wonderful the model is. So there's a leadership skill that I really, really hope that is kind of pretty obvious, that you don't need me to give you anything. You already have probably whatever you need, that you don't need to learn to code. You don't need to understand the inner workings of AI systems. You need, as always, to know how to ask the right questions about the limitations of the systems that you're using, and to note very clearly the boundary between humans and machines. When I say machines, of course, I mean models and data systems and the increased applications, agentic systems that we're using in order to interrogate data. Now, some things machines do really well. They read lots of text very, very quickly, and things that took forever now take seconds or fractions of seconds. And information is translated from tons of languages into your language of choice within a click of a button. And humans are not very good at scale. And also, many of us working in this field know that we are hugely resource constrained, and therefore we can't do that. So machines doing that is awesome. Let's use it. We really don't have any time to lose. We really don't have any extra money to spend on things that we can afford not to. So knowing where are the strengths and handing some of those off responsibly, making sure that there's always oversight, that's one thing. But I'm not going to check a Google Translate translation now 99% of the time. Only when there's something very, very specific, when there's a really kind of mission critical, very legal specific term, then I might do something else. But other than that, I've learned to rely on, automatic translation models as good enough for most of what I need. But then the other side of that is knowing what not to hand control over, where to never give up, where no matter tools you have on your hands, not to trade away the parts that make you human and that makes you worth listening to in the first place. Because if you just enter a prompt into, I don't know, into a large language model and get a very, very well-crafted narrative, you may not have added anything. What are the things that you can add? What are the right questions? What are the places where even your quirk, even your like naive, the emperor has no clothes question that makes somebody stop and ask, are we even asking the right questions? Do we consider all the considerations? Do we stand in the shoes of those impacted, or are we just kind of regurgitating the same narratives that everyone has always been doing? That is a part that is critical. And that doesn't mean not to work with AI systems. It's to use them to your benefit and to know where to question and pause and challenge them where necessary. And I'm going to end on this. You're not here today to become data scientists. You're becoming people who can hold a real tension without flinching, knowing that you're operating in an environment that is tense, contentious, with very high stakes, and that anything that you will do, you're not an observer, you're a participant in that. And this is a point that I cannot emphasize stronger, regardless of what your job title is, regardless of how high or low in the rank of an organization you are, even if you're unemployed, even if you're studying alone, everything that you do, every conversation that you have, every fact that you play out, or like every sentence that you play out to your friends or colleagues, all of that matters. You are a participant in all of these systems, and working together with others and making sure that you are um, using information and data and systems in a way that can bring us all collectively towards a future and again the present that we all want, need, and deserve. I think that is your challenge. That is our collective challenge. And I will end here, and thank you again for this opportunity, and hand over to Jamie and Anna. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Mikhail. I think that's a really useful framing and grounding for the session we're about to have here. Thank you for those thoughts. And there's a lot to reflect on. As you were remarking, that this is an incredibly fast-moving time for all things AI and knowing how to strike the balance between human intelligence and artificial intelligence, and that's what we're going to get into in the time we have today. I'm going to share my screen and go into some slides here, so bear with me. Great. So you've already heard from myself and Mikhail. I'm joined by my colleague Anna on the call today as well. Do you want to give a quick hello, Anna?
Hello.
A very quick hello. Um, so you're going to hear from myself and Anna to complement what we've heard from Mikhail already. Before we do that, we would love to know a bit more about you as well. We've obviously I've been keeping an eye on the chat, and we've seen a few comments about where people are joining from today. So we'd love to take just a couple of minutes to do a quick poll and give you a chance to share where you're from and how you're approaching topics like AI and climate change. So I'm going to start this poll, and you should see some questions appear in front of you. Just a few questions to, as I say, first of all, get a sense of where people are joining from today, what your kind of connection is to climate policy and how you feel about climate policy, and also your general thoughts on artificial intelligence as well, just to get a sense of who's in the room, how we're thinking about these issues, and hopefully this will be a useful start for the time we have today. So just take a couple of minutes to go through these questions, and we can crack on with the session. So I can see a really nice mix of people coming in so far. I will share the results in about 60 seconds, but yeah, really good to see such a wide range of locations joining this call, particularly those of you joining from time zones that are either very early in the day or late in the day. Thank you for making the effort. And again, I can see a mix here of different answers coming in for the final two questions. We'll just give a couple more seconds, let people feed in, and then we can share the results just to give everyone a snapshot of this. Great. I'm just going to share the results here, and you should be able to see these now. So as I say, yeah, really nice mix of locations around the world joining us today, which is fantastic to see. And the second question, to me personally, understanding climate policy is, and we get a nice mix of things here, confusing. I think we've all felt that before, and hopefully by showcasing Climate Policy Radar's database today, this is something that can help you to better understand climate policy. And artificial intelligence, again, a mix of answers here, everything from exciting to essential, useful, but also confusing and scary as well. And again, hopefully what we'll show you today will help you to feel a bit more comfortable using tools to use AI to understand climate policy. Thank you for taking the time to do that. I'm going to stop sharing that poll and go back to some slides. Great. So thanks for taking the time to do that. To give you a quick run through of the time we have today, I'm going to give you a bit of a background to Climate Policy Radar to kind of complement and supplement what Mikhail covered. and give you an idea of who we are and what we're trying to do. We'll then get into our AI-powered database to show you how this works in practice and how you can use our database to find information on how countries around the world are tackling climate change and other topics. We'll have a couple of opportunities throughout the session today to have a quick check-in, get your reactions to what you're seeing. And there will, of course, be time for questions at the end. So please do type in answers as we go throughout the session today. After we've had that kind of first check-in, Anna is going to tell you a bit about a particular feature of our database, which can help you to, as we like to say, supercharge your search in our database. And we're going to spend a bit of time talking about how we use AI to do that. We'll then give you the opportunity to have a play around with our database for yourself, to see how you could use this to support your interests, your work, your volunteering roles, whatever it might be. So we'll have some time for you to actually use the database in practice. And as I say, we'll have time for questions and discussion at the end of today's session as well. So please do feel free to contribute your questions throughout the time we have today. So first of all, just to go back to who we are. Well, Climate Policy Radar is a non-profit based in the United Kingdom, but working in a global context. And we build open databases of climate and nature documents. And we use AI-powered tools to help make those documents as searchable and as accessible as possible. And we'll get into what those documents are, but right from the top, just to make clear what we're talking about here, our databases include things like policies and laws from countries around the world, climate finance documents, so what projects around the world are being financed to support action on climate change, and a whole range of other documents as well, which we'll get into. And our mission really is to make these documents as discoverable, queryable, searchable, and as usable as possible. So really trying to help you get access to the information that's in these important documents to help you do your jobs or your volunteering roles or whatever it might be more easily. I want to briefly touch upon the challenge that we're trying to address at Climate Policy Radar. So I'm sure all of you know that making good decisions on climate change, whether it's a policy that a government is trying to enact, a new policy or a new law, or perhaps researching or analyzing how a country is performing on climate change. In order to do those things, you need access to good data. And in our case at Climate Policy Radar, that's what we call policy data, so documents on how countries around the world are tackling climate change. So you need access to those documents. But as I'm sure many of you have experienced, actually finding and accessing those documents is not always a straightforward process. Governments obviously publish their actions on climate change, their policies, their laws, etc. But knowing where to look for those documents is not always a straightforward process. These documents are housed in multiple different websites, different government portals, different government departments. Perhaps sometimes they're behind paywalls or they're not always very accessible to you. And there's no one central location to date that has tried to bring these documents together to make it easy to find. Of course, we all know that we can use tools like ChatGPT or Claude or other LLM-based tools out there. But there's issues with using these tools to find information on climate change and climate policy. There's a number of issues. These tools are not trained specifically on climate change and related topics. These are not specific to climate. And that means that they're not always best suited to finding this information. They might present incorrect or out of date information. And when you're making a new policy on climate change or you're doing research on climate change, you need to know that that information is accurate, up to date, and verified. Now, even when you find the right policy document that you're looking for, actually understanding the content of that policy document is not always straightforward. Often the format of these documents make them very difficult to search through. Sometimes these documents may have actually been scanned into a PDF format. And perhaps you've been there in the past where you're doing a Control F search and it's actually not even possible to search through the document because it's been scanned in or something like that. Another problem that, again, we've all had, I'm sure, ideas on climate change are described differently in different contexts, sometimes using very complex terminology. So you might have to do 10 keyword searches just to investigate one issue. You could think about something like deforestation. You would have to search for forest, woodland, forests, loss, deforestation, afforestation, woodland loss, all these different terms that are used to describe the same idea. And of course, documents are written in different languages as well. So you don't want to just be limited to finding information on countries that you can speak that language. You want to be able to find documents from around the world, and that can pose a barrier as well. And this is where Climate Policy Radar comes in, with these two challenges in mind. Firstly, finding the information you're looking for to understand action on climate change, and then being able to access and search through that information. We're trying to address both of those challenges. And we do that through building open, searchable databases of climate and nature documents from around the world. Our databases are free and open, so they're free to use, and we do that because we want to support policymaking, better research, and more informed action on climate change and other topics. And we're going to get into this database today and show you how you can use this in practice. And what this is all about, as I was just saying, is turning these often long, unstructured, complex documents into more searchable and accessible forms of information. And we build databases covering a very wide range of documents, including this list you can see here. So everything from national laws and policies on climate change to submissions to the UN that governments make, climate finance project documents, climate litigation cases, and beyond. We have a whole range of different types of documents that showcase what action is taking place on climate change around the world. And our goal is to really make these documents as searchable for you as possible. We have about 1 million users per year across our databases, and our databases have a very global coverage. So we cover, basically every geography around the world at the national level, and we have plans to go down to covering states and regions as well. But we have very global coverage of our database, currently having over 35,000 documents in our database, and this continues to grow over time, not just in number, but also the types of documents that we cover within our database as well. And we source these documents from a range of credible expert sources. We work with some of these organizations you can see here, including academia, NGOs, think tanks, international organizations, and beyond. We do this because we want people to know that when they come to our database, they can trust the information that they're finding. And we place a very strong emphasis on working with expert, credible partners to bring in new documents into our database. There's new documents added to this database every week, and we work with a wide range of organizations to support this. Now, we've already touched upon it a little bit, and we will get into this in more detail today. And I think Michal gave a very useful kind of framing for our approach to AI at Climate Policy Radar. But we take a very purposeful and responsible approach to using AI specifically for the domain of climate and nature. And I think it's really important to say that at every step of the process at Climate Policy Radar, AI systems are designed and led by humans behind the scene. And we want to make sure that the tools that we're developing, which are using AI and data science, we're doing that for the right reasons, and that this is all done for a purpose. So we're not just kind of I think with many tools that you see in AI, it can often seem like people are using AI because it's a hot topic. But I think at Climate Policy Radar, as I say, we're being very purposeful in the way we design our tools and products. And we do that in various different ways. So we use AI to make documents searchable. We use AI to translate documents. And we develop specific AI-powered tools to help find particular topics and make documents as searchable as possible. And we're going to get into some of that today. And I'm sure people will have questions about this, and of course, happy to answer these questions when we have time towards the end. So I hope that's all useful context. I'd want to get into our database itself because I think this is the real value of the session today. Without further ado, I'm just going to open up our database and give you an introduction to how you can use this yourself in practice. Great. So you should be able to see our database here. And as I said, this is completely, free to use and an open database. So we will share the link with you. And this, to be clear, this is a tool you can go and use straight after this session if you want to. This is not behind a paywall. This being a free and open tool is a really important principle of the work that we're doing at Climate Policy Radar. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of how you could actually use this database in practice. This is the kind of intro page to our database, and you can directly search from here if you want to. I'm going to actually click through and click on the magnifying glass here just to get us through into the database itself. And if we do that, you can see this kind of intro page to the database, and there's quite a lot to explain here. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to kind of talk through what you're seeing here. One of the first things you'll see on the left-hand side here is the document types that we cover in our database. And you can easily filter by the different type of document that you're interested in. So you'll see these document types I mentioned earlier, whether it's countries' submissions to UN processes, whether it's national laws and national policies, climate finance project documents, corporate disclosures, and beyond. This list continues to grow in number as well over time. And just to give you an example here, you can see I'm kind of filtering through here and just choosing different document types. And what's happening when I do that is that this list of documents in the middle of the page is updating as I go through that. So in this case, you can see if we were interested in policies, I could select policies as the document type, and that's showing us over 5,000 results that we have in our database. We'll get into that in more detail in just a second, but just to show you a couple of other things here. For topics, I'm going to leave that for now, and Anna is going to come to that. You'll see geography here as well. So if you are interested in one particular country or one particular region of the world, it's very easy to select that and just see documents, in this case, for Europe and Central Asia. Very easy to choose the geography you're interested in, and likewise date as well. If you're interested in a particular time frame, then very easy to just see documents for that. You'll see up the top here a search bar. Now, I don't need to kind of over-explain search to you. This is obviously a really common feature of lots of databases and search engines, etc. Just to explain currently how our search is best used. This is great if you're interested in finding one particular keyword that is mentioned across different documents. We have quite a lot of improvements coming very soon for our search capabilities. But at the moment, the search bar at the top is best used if you are interested in one particular topic or keyword. This is the way to find information on that. So just to give you an example of this, if you were particularly interested in deforestation, you could use search to search for deforestation. And if I do that, what's happening here is that this is basically looking for any reference to the word deforestation across the full text of every document in our database. So it's scanning through literally every word across every document we have. And you can see if I do that, this is giving us over 5,000 results, which is quite a lot. So we might want to make this more specific. And in this case, I could just select policies. So we might be interested in how deforestation is mentioned across different policies. And again, to make this more specific, I could choose one particular geography. So I'm just going to choose Sub-Saharan Africa as an example here. And now what this is doing, you can see this is showing us quite a specific set of results here. So this is showing us any reference to the word deforestation in policy documents from Sub-Saharan Africa. And you can see what's appearing here is, you can see this blue text has appeared here. So in this case, view 106 text passages matching your search. What this means in that case is that there's 106 references to deforestation in this document. And I think what I'm going to do is choose an example where we might be able to see translation as part of this as well. So if I just select Gabon in this case, I'm going to open this up. And if I click here on view 35 text passages matching your search, you can see a little snapshot of where deforestation appears in this document. The real value of our database comes from this next step. And I'm actually going to click through into the document itself. And you can see this document in question, which is Gabon's National Climate Plan, available in the middle of the page here. And the references to deforestation are made available on the right-hand side of the page. And what we enable you to do here is to very easily search through this document to see where these references to deforestation have appeared. So you can see I'm scrolling through here, and this is taking us to different points in the document where deforestation has appeared. You'll see when I'm doing this, this is taking us to, in this case, this reference here, and you can see it's highlighted in yellow just to make clear where this is appearing. And something else you'll notice here, as I mentioned, this document is obviously in French, but we're seeing the English translation pulled out on the right-hand side of the document here. In the future, we would love to be able to do this the other way around as well, so that our database is available in other languages, French, Spanish, and beyond. For now, we just do translation into English, but going forward, we know it's really important to do that the other way around as well. And hopefully this is a nice indication of how quickly this helps you to find information you're looking for within these documents. So very easily you can understand how a particular country might be trying to tackle deforestation and what goals or plans they might be setting out to address something like deforestation. So a very quick example there, but hopefully a nice indication of how our database helps you to find the information that you're interested in within these documents. You can see here up the top, I can actually hover over Gabon in this case. And if I click through into this link, this takes you to like a country overview page. So now I can see all the documents we have for Gabon in our database. And you can see we've got laws, you can see all the policies, you can see climate finance project documents. So all the documents for this country featured here, as well as some nice contextual information about legislative processes and other things. I'm just going to go back to the search I did. So go back to the search for deforestation within policy documents from Gabon. You can also choose to download some information about this search as well. So if you wanted to go away and use this as a basis for further research and analysis, you might want to download this data. And you can do that, again, free of charge for non-commercial use. And if I was to click download CSV here, this is going to download this as a kind of spreadsheet friendly format with contextual supporting information about these particular documents, in this case, these 6 documents. So again, another way that we try to make this database as useful as possible to support policymaking, to support research. And hopefully this has given a kind of indication of how this can support things that you might already be doing in your jobs or in your hobbies or volunteering roles, making this information as easy as possible to find for you, to really speed up this process, whether it is making new policies, whether it's researching a new topic or a paper you're writing or something like that. Hopefully that's a nice indication of how our database can support you in doing different tasks. So that was quite a lot of information, and I just want to kind of take a pause there and give you an opportunity to kind of reflect and distill and reflect on some of those things we've seen. Before we move on to the next section, I'm just going to open up another poll to give you an opportunity just to, as I say, reflect on some of the things you've just seen here. Please also feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we'll try to come to those when we have time. So I'm just going to launch a little poll here, and hopefully you should be able to see that now. So first of all, super quick sense check on how you're feeling about what you've seen so far. I'm aware it's a lot of information to take in a short period of time, but feel free to take a second to just answer how you're feeling on this so far. Also, if there's one particular document type that you're most interested in here, please feel free to share about that. And there's a third question about if there's something you'd like to know more about based on what you've just seen, you can write a short answer there. Also, feel free to share that directly in the chat as well. So I'll just give it a few minutes for you to reflect on what you've seen here. And I can see there's answers coming in already, so thanks for doing so. Just give a few more seconds. I think most people have had the chance to feed in now. Great. I'm going to end that poll there and share the results so people can see. Glad to see that most people feel kind of clear or clear-ish on what you've seen so far. As I say, I appreciate there's a lot of information being conveyed here and often fairly technical information, so that's not a problem if you're not feeling 100% clear on this at the moment. As I say, happy to come to questions at the end, of course. Yeah, and a really nice split of interest across different document types as well. I think we know that a lot of people are interested in the national laws and policies on our database, but as I said, we have a whole range of different document types, and depending on what your job or your role is, you might be interested in different types there as well. And I can see we've had a few responses from short answers as well. So thanks for sharing that. And yeah, as I say, do feel free to use the chat for questions, and we'll come to those when we have time. So I'm going to stop sharing there, and I'm going to pass over to Anna, who's going to tell us about another feature of the database, which is our topics functionality, and how you can use that in practice. So Anna, I'll pass over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Jamie. Let me share my screen to start with. That should work. Oh, it shares the whole screen. That is not what I meant to do. Apologies. Stop sharing. Stop sharing. You think that after all these years of sharing things on Zoom, I would know what to do, huh? This one. Great. That is the right screen. So the topics filter I'm going to be talking about, I'll go through a little bit more quickly because we're running behind a little bit, but please feel free to keep the questions coming. We'll try to get to them in the chat because we want to leave a little bit of time for you guys to have a play around with the tool yourselves as well. And hopefully you'll get a better feel for it when you're doing these things. So if I'm going too quickly, I do apologize. But the thing I want to be talking about is how to account for one of the things that Michal mentioned and Jamie then mentioned again, which is that there's just so many different ways you can talk about a certain topic, right? So a very simple example is that a storm happening over the Americas is largely going to be called a hurricane, when the exact same storm, if it were off the coast of Japan or China or the Philippines, would be called a typhoon, right? And so if you were to search for only one of those two terms, you're just typing in hurricane in the search box, you're not going to get all the results that you're probably interested in. And there's a lot of very nuanced ways in which this can also show up, right? Different ways in which communities can refer to themselves or refer to others can really make a big difference for what you're finding, as well as all the technical language that we see a lot of in climate policy documents. And so topics is one of the ways that we hope to make that a lot easier, to make our search a lot more accessible to many different peoples. And we have over 100 of them now. They're grouped in a few different overarching categories. We have different ways of finding different types of targets or different economic sectors, as well as, for example, impacted groups. That includes a filter for youth and young people, various just transition topics, renewable energy adaptation, mitigation is coming out very soon. So there's a large spread of different kinds of topics that cover sort of all the basics of the climate policy literature. And what happens when you click on one of them is that it launches a pretty complicated search, right? So we develop in the background little classifiers, little bits of code, or sometimes machine learning models that determine, is this passage about a certain thing, right? So these work across all of the documents in the data set, which means that if you click under impacted groups on the youth filter, it's not just going to search for youth, but also for young people, for child, for children, for all the different ways in which you might be referring to a young person. And that makes it much easier to search in a way that is comprehensive without having to think yourself about all the ways that are maybe technical or culture dependent, how someone might refer to a certain topic. And so renewable energy is one example where you have lots of technical language, right? You can be talking about zero carbon fuels or renewable sources or zero emission energy or inexhaustible energy, right? All these different ways in which you might be referring to a certain term that you might not even know about. And we develop these things with experts so that we're really sure that the things that we're putting in here are how policymakers themselves are actually talking about these kinds of topics, so that the searches that you do become much easier and that you can treat these things like trusted building blocks. And I want to pause here a tiny little bit on a question that came in the chat already about how we approach AI in general, right? A lot of these are really tiny, tiny models. If you ask ChatGPT, for example, it launches a very, very big model that uses a lot of energy. We try to use as much as possible the simplest method that still gets us really good results. And so a lot of these are very complicated keyword-based approaches. Some of them are machine learning models, but they're machine learning models that are about 1,000 of the size of something that you would see under Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT. And they still get really good contextual-based responses because we have that real grounding in experts in how we created these things in the first place. So we can have a discussion more on that later if you want to. There's a few more slides too when these are shared around that talk a bit more about the technicals that underlie this. For time reasons, we'll skip over those for now. Let's stop sharing this exact screen and go see what that actually looks like in practice, right? And again, apologies if I'm going a little bit quickly. Boop. Get me out of my flow screen. Oh, that's because there's someone in the waiting room. And I'll switch over to the view that Jamie was showing you guys before. I'll clear all the searches that I have active here and show you the topics filter. This is the thing that you start to see. And these are all the different categories that I was talking to you about before, right? So you can see we have quite a few. And so if you come in here with a question that is, for example, related to climate justice or the just transition, maybe, you can click on one of those and see what kinds of filters we have. I would imagine quite a few of you guys are, for example, quite interested in what the education sector are doing, what things like reskilling and upskilling is happening. And so those kinds of things are all in the aligning skills section. So we can click on that and we can combine it with all those other filters that Jamie was talking about before. So we can say, for example, I am here in a UNFCCC space. I'm only interested in things that people submit to the UNFCCC. And then I'll start to do a search for passages. And you see that the number of results goes down by quite a lot, right? So let's take a look at the first one. We have 18 text passages from Colombia. This will probably be in Spanish. But no matter, as we say, we have the translations here on the right-hand side. And I'll do the search with all those complicated, with all the complicated matchings that we were talking about before. It's just loading the document now. I'm not sure why it is quite as slow. I think the Zoom is getting a little bit large for my internet connection. Oh, it's because it's 1,300 pages. So if we go to, for example, a given country, geographies are here at the bottom. We might be interested in, let's say, oh, one click. We might be interested in a given country, so we can say Nigeria, for example, and see what is happening in Nigeria and see that they have submitted an NDC last year, and we get 5 text passages here where they're talking about national technical and vocational education training, and a passage about migration, making sure that migrants are within a just transition type of framing. And we can see that passage in context. If we're confused, we can just click on it and it'll load again the whole document and show you exactly where those passages are coming from. And here we're talking about social inclusion of the whole population. So they seem to have a pretty extensive, at least aspiration, right, to do things on the just transition side. But you might think, okay, that's nice. We have their plans in the NDC. Maybe we want to also see what is actually making it into a law, right? And I think one of the really nice things about the CPR app is that you can quite quickly switch between these types of databases. And so I can remove this party filter, this UNFCCC filter, and just switch over to laws. And then we see quite a different image, right? We only get 3 laws that have mentions, and most of them mention things only once. We have a National Board for Technical Education. We have an Electricity Act that is talking about education and technical education again. And in this last one, periodic training, retraining as necessary in their environmental sector regulations. So there is only a little bit of all those big aspirations in Nigeria that are making it into concrete laws, or at least into concrete climate laws. I'll stop sharing here again. We want to have some time for you guys to do your own little search on this. And so I'm going to pause here for questions first, and then we have a little exercise.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I think that's a really useful intro to topics. It's one of the things that it's hard sometimes to convey how much goes into that, because we as an organization spend a lot of time informing those topic filters that Anna showed you there, and making sure that those are backed by human intelligence and channeling artificial intelligence. So it's something we spend a lot of time working on internally, and making sure that we get this right as a support tool, and we can build new topic filters for everyone, and that sort of thing. So yeah, really nice intro there. There was one question. Yeah, we can take a couple of minutes here to ask some questions, and then come to these at the end as well. There was one question about how often we're updating these documents. Happy to clarify that. So the question was, how often do we update these documents from different sources? We have new documents coming in every week in our database. And as I said, we work with our data providers to make sure that we have lots of new documents coming in on a fairly regular basis. I would say different document types are updated on a different frequency. So particularly laws and policies and UN submissions are kept very, very up to date. And we have a couple of our data providers who share those with us on a very regular basis. Whereas for some other document types, they're updated on a less frequent basis. But generally speaking, we have new documents coming in every week. So you know that, yeah, when you come to our database, this is kept up to date, and is a very live resource to support your work.
See a few more questions in the chat. I think I'm going to answer most of them in the chat, while we set everyone else to a little exercise. Some more person in the waiting room. Let me share my screen again. And this time I select the right one in the first go. So here's our first little exercise, for which we'll have maybe about 5 minutes to do. Go to the app, use the database to find out what target your country's government has set on solar energy or wind energy. And we've got quite an international group here, so this should be interesting. We should get lots of different kinds of results. And so take a few minutes, go to the app, click around a little bit, and then find out with those topic filters what your country has said in terms of targets. And we'll just leave you guys to do that. If you're on a laptop and want to use your phone, there's a QR code there at the bottom that you can scan. So go out, go find it. I'm going to be quiet except for noting the current time. And so we'll give you guys until sort of 6 past. If you find things, share them in the chat as you're going, and we'll shout a few of you guys out.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions or needs any prompts, please do feel free to use the chat. I guess one hint to help you along the way is just thinking about both of the ways that we've showcased how you can search through documents. So we've obviously got the search bar, but we also have the topic filters, which you can play around with as well. So yeah, as Anna said, take a few minutes to play around with the database. We'll be here, and if you've got any questions, please ask us. And yeah, a few guiding questions as well, just to get you thinking about what sort of information you might be able to find by doing this. So the different document types, what type of target are we talking about when it's a target on solar energy or wind energy? Like, what does that actually entail in practice? And yeah, is there a particular date attached? Is it a recent document or an old document? Lots to think about there. I can see one comment saying someone's struggling to find information from their country for Sierra Leone, if you're on the database, you can use the geography filter, which is available on the left-hand side, and it just says geography. And if you open that up, you should be able to search for particular countries so that you can only see documents for one country or one region around the world, or if you want multiple countries. And for avoidance of doubt, I can share a link to, in that case, Sierra Leone, just to show you how you would find that. And I think targets, for me personally, I really find the targets, not to give too much away, the targets filter on our database one of the most useful features of our database. It's a really good example of how you can find very quickly specific information on what countries around the world are doing on climate change, like what specific targets are being set. This is like often what people want to know, right? Is like by 2030 or by 2040 or 2050, what does my country's government have planned for that year? And it's really important for various reasons, whether it's holding your government to account or thinking about progress towards that target or a whole range of other things. So as Anna said, once you've had a chance to play around with that, feel free to post in kind of the result that you found, either the specific target or something else about that target that you found, and that will give us an idea of what people have come across.
Can we send the link again? We can send the link again. Let me send it here. Oops. Thanks also for noting, for example, that Cameroon's English NDC is missing. We'll have a look at those kinds of things. We're always happy to take feedback on board. Okay, we're at time. We're mostly seeing people who can't find their country's targets. So that's a good sign, I think, that we should show you how that's done. So I got here a response from someone who says they can't find something from Nigeria. So let's try that. If I go in here, and again, I go back to the search page and I clear all the stuff that I was doing before, I can say I'm interested in the country of Nigeria. And I'm interested in targets. And we said for renewable energy. So I can think here, what do we have on renewable energy? We have a general renewable energy topic. And then we see mostly targets coming up from actually projects from the Multilateral Climate Fund, but there is apparently also a target here from Nigeria's legislative branch, 100% electricity access by 2030, 50% renewable energy share in the generation mix by 2030, and a 9% annual pace of new electricity connections until 2030, right? So you get really pretty detailed responses fairly quickly. And if you want to see what this is about, again, just click on the results. It'll take you to the original document and you'll get there. And in this case, the text is very, very tiny, but there highlighted is indeed a sectoral target, and they have transport targets and such as well. Okay, exercise number 2. All is not lost. There is a second exercise. The second exercise here is to talk a little bit about youth, right? Most of us on the call here are young people. So let's see how youth shows up in climate policy. We'll want you guys to be a little bit more exploratory here. So use the filters as you see fit to figure out how young people are being mentioned in all kinds of submissions. What kinds of documents are you seeing that youth is being mentioned in? And if you have a little bit of time left over, or you're not getting lots of results within your own country, maybe that's different in a neighboring country. So hop over and see what you might be able to learn from a neighbor. Um, we're again a little bit. We've made good time for now. So let's give you guys 8 minutes until 16 past to do this particular exercise, and please feel free to keep sharing things in the chat. We're getting to the questions there as well.
Yeah, and again, remember you've got a couple of different ways to try and find this information, whether it's the search bar or by using the topic filters that Anna showed you. There's a couple of different ways that you can experiment doing a keyword search in the search bar, or perhaps using some of the topic filters. And as we just saw in the previous one, the geography filter is there for you if you're looking at your particular country. There's a few options you can do to kind of narrow down your search in there. One of the things that with our database, we try to make clear to people is that I think people are really obviously very familiar with using something like Google, and doing a kind of search of maybe 10 different words, or saying like, show me documents from Nigeria on solar energy, and like typing that into the search bar. In our database, that's not how to get the best results. So as I say, for search, using the search bar, that's really good for like a particular keyword you're interested in. And then you can kind of complement that with the other filters that we have to help you find the information you're looking for. So it does take a bit of getting used to, but hopefully spending time playing around with the database will give you the opportunity to feel familiar with that.
Yeah, Jamie mentioned it briefly already, but search is going to start looking a little bit different in the next few weeks. We're slowly rolling out things. So some of the things might look a little bit different by the time, for example, COP rolls around. We think all of it for the better. So that should help with things with like multi-keyword phrases, for example, should become a lot easier to search for. Is there a way to download the extracted passages from each of the documents? Ask Nan. Hi, Nan. Nice to see you. We're former colleagues, Nan and I. There is not really a way to get passage level data from the search page directly. But if you're interested in getting passage level data, we can point you to the current Hugging Face dataset, where you'd need to rerun the search. Or if you're really interested in doing this a lot, then come talk to me and we can give you access to our whole data lake where you can run whatever search you want and get very complicated results very quickly. We're seeing a result from Togo. That's great. Young people being mentioned in the Napa. Is it a useful mention? I guess is always my question as a former youth activist myself. I saw a lot of very tokenistic mentions of youth in a long list, right? We can all probably recite these lists where you're talking about women, indigenous people, youth, disabled people, sexual minorities, ethnic minorities, and then everyone gets included, so no one gets included. What I'm always looking for is there a specific thing that a country is doing for young people? How are young people in particular being protected more or taken into consideration more? Is there a space maybe in processes or committees for youth representatives in particular? We're seeing some cool stuff coming here in the chat from Nepal. Um, Talking about awareness and innovation, but the actual decision making is limited, right? So a somewhat similar thing to what I was saying there before. Needing more youth participation in climate policy. I think we can probably all share that goal if we're in this chat in particular. Just 2 documents from Bolivia. Not all countries are doing equally well, right? I think that's also fair to say. in the preamble in Sierra Leone, highly vulnerable to climate change and disaster risk. Yeah, yeah. Interesting question about Cameroon there too. If you can share a little bit about your process and maybe how young people were involved, that's also great. 2 documents from Nigeria. Which kinds of documents, Bosan? You have 2 more minutes to finish this little exercise.
See, there's a comment about finding it hard to spot mentions of youth for India. I'm going to do a quick search and see what we can find you there. I'll share the link in your comment there.
Great. One other example from India. Kenya, youth are mentioned 11 times in the NDC. In education, educational curricula, ensuring that youth and children are equipped with climate literacy and skills to drive climate action. Great. That's a good start. And we have one person from Australia finding 32 documents, including the NDC and GBF. I think we did a little project recently on youth involvement in Turkey, who's going to host the next COP, and they have a very extensive youth strategy, but none of it is making its way into climate law yet. So that's also always interesting to compare the different databases. Great. We are more or less at time for this. We have a little bit of time left in session for practical questions. Demi, do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. So as Anna said, we have some time for some questions. We've also got a little poll just to give you a chance to reflect on this again, get your sense on how you found that. So I'm just going to open up one final poll to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts here. So you now should be able to see that. So again, just another quick check-in. How are you feeling about what you found? How easy was it to use the database? Does it need a bit more practice? Let us know how you got on there. An opportunity to share something you found out in this exercise as well. If you want to share any general thoughts on this, please do feel free as well. Chance to reflect on the topic filters as well. What do you make of those? How useful are those? Do you find them a bit confusing? Are they impactful for your work? And if there's any topics from the topic filters that you're particularly interested in, you can share that as well as a short answer. So just take a couple of minutes. And beyond this, of course, as I say, we do have a bit of time for questions. So if you have other questions about anything you've seen today, any questions on our database, the documents we have, how you can use it in practice, what type of tasks this database might be useful to do, or more general questions about how we're approaching AI and how we get that right in the future, other things like that. Happy to answer those questions as well. So I can see some answers coming in here. I'll just give another sort of 30 seconds or so for this poll, and then if there's questions, we can take a bit of time to answer those. Great. Just going to close this poll, show you the results here. So again, nice to see that most people feel fairly clear about what they've seen. As I say, I know that, getting familiar with the tools we've shown in this database, it takes a bit of practice and a bit of getting used to, but I hope this is like a nice introduction and triggering some thoughts about how this has relevance for your work and for your interests. I can see people have shared some answers about things they found out in this exercise as well. And yeah, a mix of responses about our topic filters. Again, a really powerful tool to help you quickly find information that you're looking for and show you things that you might not even have known to search for in the first place. But again, I can see some people have said it's maybe a little bit confusing, or some things are slightly unclear or need a bit more practice with, and that's totally understandable as well. Great. So thank you for sharing that. I'm just gonna close that poll now. Can see we've had maybe one or two extra questions come in here as well. One on, do you intend to implement a chat bot to interact with the database? That's a really good question, because I'm sure everyone on this call has seen lots and lots of websites and services have like chosen to go down that path of implementing a chat bot as like a customer service thing, or something like that. In my opinion, a lot of organizations are going down that path because they know they should be doing something with AI, and they're worried about kind of falling behind. And a chatbot seems like a kind of easy win in that regard. Now, I can't speak for everyone on this call, but my experience using most of those chatbots is that most of them aren't very good. And often it just redirects you to an FAQ page, or it doesn't really know how to answer your question. Some are better than others, of course. I think for us, it's not the path we're currently going down. We do have new changes coming to the database. I think the way we are approaching our database is that we want to do, first of all, we want to do what we're currently doing as well as we can possibly do it. So we want to capitalize and double down on those tools that we've already used, trying to use use those search tools as well as we possibly can, but also look to new tools that we can offer as well. And I had previously seen a comment about policy coherence. So how do we, how can you assess how a country is aligning its goals or targets across different themes, like how are the goals they're setting on climate consistent with the goals they're setting on nature, for example, or are the ambitions and actions in their NDC consistent with their national policies? Answering those questions is really important, and that's something we want to try and think about more in the future as well, is how can our database actually help you to directly compare different documents for a country or between countries as well. So there's definitely more we have planned on that front, and obviously all of that is underpinned by data science and AI powered tools. So I think for now, a chatbot is probably not something we're going to be doing, but there's certainly more that we are planning as well. So
Yeah, we have experimented with one. There used to be a chatbot. It was just really difficult to get the chatbots to stay factual, and to stay on point and to not hallucinate information, right? And so for us, it's a thing that we always keep an eye on, and the technology does keep improving. But getting the data layer right, and making sure that everything that we're putting out there is trustworthy, is ethically sourced in terms of all the knowledge that goes into it, so that people who come to our website know they can trust the information we're giving to them. That's always the first priority. And for chatbots, at least when we were doing this experiment, it just wasn't quite there yet. But never say never, I guess. Last question I think that we have time for here is one from Manar, saying that many countries mention youth in climate documents, but the implementation remains limited. How can governments move from symbolic participation to giving young people real influence in climate governance? I think we want that, right? But it is a hard thing for a single NGO to accomplish. So I think showing up to sessions like this, chatting to people who are in sessions like this, organizing yourselves is a really good start. And I'm sure the folks from Youth4Capacity will only try to support you with that. So stay in touch there too. But there are things that you can do with a tool like CPRs, right? You can, for example, find passages on climate justice or on youth to try to figure out what are the provisions that are there. Can we find a little hook somewhere hidden in a law that says young people should be involved, and then go to the policymakers and say, you agreed that young people should be involved, so why don't we start to make work from this, right? Because a lot of these words, even if they are symbolic, you can use them as a little hook to try to push for change in a direction that you want to see. So I would encourage you to keep on the lookout as much as possible for finding mentions in the fields that you're interested in, and take really seriously the words that have been written down by policymakers in your countries, or as we try to do with this exercise a little bit, see what's happening in the country next to you, see what provisions are already there, and maybe you can learn something in the wording or in what's being set up in the countries next to you, so that you can push that conversation forward, because it's really a great work. A few more questions here that we won't have time for here. I think we hand back at this point to Reedy to close it off, and I'll try to get to some of the questions in the chat in the meantime.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We still have about 72 people with us. Drop in your reactions. This has been a very informative session. I think even for me, as Jamie and Anna, you were kind of showing us how to use this, I got really into it as well. And at some point, I was just like, oh, that's where the mention is, and especially for the youth one. And I know someone in the chat as well said that they were having trouble finding something from India, and I'm from India as well. And it was very insightful to see where all those mentions are. And I think another personal reflection from my end as well is that, especially now, given that whether there are chatbots or the interface like ChatGPT, Claude, whatever else, I think the intention where we use such models is very in the sense of like questioning, or like whatever we want a task done, and we kind of go with that. But with this database, it was almost like it takes you back. It has a good mix of the fact that it uses AI, but also just how you search it feels a little bit more like how we used to do it before the AI boom as well. So it's a great like interface to work with. And I know from the reactions in the chat as well, that everyone has thoroughly enjoyed sort of going through this. And just to support what Anna was saying as well, is that I think it starts from engaging within your, policy space, whether it's local, municipal, national, wherever. I think it also starts from knowing where those, say, for example, you're a young person wanting to engage where youth is even mentioned in whatever policy or whatever target, right? And holding your governments accountable for it, and knowing from there, how do you find different entry points? That being said, I do wanna, there was another question in the chat on like, how can you be more informed on the work of, say, Climate Policy Radar or other organizations? So what we do at Youth for Capacity is for exactly that. With this Becoming series, we work with a lot of different organizations on different topics. And again, capacity building is such a cross-cutting topic. So we cover everything from data-driven climate leaders, becoming that, to one of the previous sessions that we've done was how to become a climate journalist. And we also have a little bit of a resource that has come out of that. The previous one we worked on was also a little bit on adaptation. So what we would say is that find as many opportunities. Programs like Youth for Capacity and our sibling initiative, Youth for Climate, that is run by the UN Development Program, are great entry points to sort of start anywhere, whether you're a student or you are in your careers already, or you're very new to the climate action landscape, or kind of established and already in policymaking spaces, or have a startup of your own. There's something for everyone. So I think that would be a great place to start off. That being said, I just want to leave you with a couple of other resources, more direct resources. Give me a second while I share my screen. I know there were some questions on the Climate Catalyst mentorship program in the chat. That's another thing that we run, a flagship product that Youth for Capacity has. We finished the project design bootcamp and the movement building bootcamp. And I also wanted to take the chance to kind of show you that we have the bootcamp digests on the webpage as well. My colleague Eva has dropped it. So in case you missed the first two bootcamps, you can go right onto the webpage and look at these bootcamp digests. It's a great way to kind of get to know what happened in them. We are currently finalizing the dates for the Entrepreneurial Mindset Bootcamp. So that's something that we will reach out to you on. Stay tuned. But the QR code is there if this is the first time that you're hearing of this. Yeah, all the information is on there. We have two courses as well. If you've done the mentorship program, you've already probably done the systems change and behavioral science course, but we have another one which is becoming a climate champion. It's more of a 101 styles. These are two fantastic courses that we've developed over the last 2 years with the UN System Staff College and UNCC Learn, which I would recommend for everyone to sort of take the opportunity whenever, especially now that there's summer and if you're in school, there's a little bit of a break right now. So build your capacities through these courses. Another project that we're working on and have been working on over the last couple of years is the language of climate action. This is essentially very, defining or youth owning and defining key terms that we hear a lot in the climate action landscape. So these are informative sort of explainer videos, both in short form, because as young people, we love a good scroll. We love a good 30-minute snippet of, explanation or definition to something, but there are longer form, more detailed explanations of it on YouTube as well. So check that out. And then finally, if you haven't already signed up, please just sign up to our newsletter. We keep growing that mailing list and essentially share all the information of sessions like this and other opportunities that we have for young people. With that being said, from the Youth Capacity team and the UN Climate Change Secretariat, I just want to thank the Climate Policy Radar for this fantastic session. Jamie, and thank you so much. And my regards to Michelle as well for her intervention and framing and for walking us through everything that you have going on in the database, but also kind of giving us snippets of what is to come. We are right on time, but like we do always, we would love to take a group picture. There are about 60 of us still here. So if you can and are able to, please do turn on your cameras. Let's take a quick group picture. And we want to thank, of course, this session would have been nothing without all of our audience. So thanks for joining us early in your mornings, afternoons, evenings. We saw a lot of people joining in from Asia, so it's probably like late for y'all, and some from Australia as well. So thank you so much for joining in, and you'll see a pop-up on your screen that says just to accept the screenshot. So click allow on there, and you should be on it. I'll give a couple of seconds for people to accept that. But with that being said, thank you so much, everyone. I wish you a lovely rest of your week. And thanks again, Climate Policy Radar, for this fantastic session. Take care.
Thank you very much.